Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. I'm Gabe Pyle, one of the instructors here at the ICC, and I'm here with Joseph Gerber, a graduate of 2022. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, yeah. Joe was kind enough to agree to a short interview, and looking forward to hearing more about what he has done since graduating, what his life is like, as well as maybe you'll share a little bit about some of the projects you worked on, both for work as well as some of the work that you've done outside of that. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay, cool. Well, one of the questions that I wanted to start off with is we just want to know more about you. Tell us about yourself. Tell us what you do now and kind of how you got to that point.
Sure. I came into Cedarville in fall of 2017 as a mechanical engineering major, just like a lot of ICC students do. And just like a lot of future ICC students, it wasn't creative enough for me. The statics and mechanics materials class weaned me out, like a lot of others, and I got talked into coming to the ICC, and that was a great decision. So after my first 3 years, getting put back a year on main campus, I came to the ICC, and yeah, I graduated in 2022, and we had a really awesome class, and my experience at the ICC was really cool, really cool. So after I actually met my wife, Abby. She was also class of 2022 at the ICC, and we got married 4 months after graduation. And when we got married, we moved to Maryland, which is where my parents are from. And right off the bat, career-wise for me, it was definitely a grind to get to where I wanted to be. See, I always had this lifelong aspiration of working specifically with roller coasters, and that tailored itself towards themed entertainment the more creative my career route took. And so just wanting to work in theme parks was my end goal. And so for I would say after graduation for over a year, I was very aggressively trying to get my foot in the door. And one thing I will probably reiterate multiple times throughout our call is that the themed entertainment industry is a very competitive industry, especially depending on where you want to see yourself within that industry. So really the first opportunity that found me was the summer after I graduated. I had made some contacts throughout my senior year, and I was able to do some freelance work for a few weeks before we got married. And that was just working in SketchUp, doing some rendering, visualizing, spaces, to pitch concepts to a client. And so that was my foot in the door with a company who works here in Orlando, New York, Los Angeles, really all around the world, but those are their main national headquarters. And they do a lot of scenic design, stuff like that. So I was really pressing hard into full-time employment with that company for the first year after graduation. And as the Lord willed, that was not in his cards. The first opportunity I had for full-time employment was, like I said, I would say about 14 to 16 months after graduation. I got hired to be a technical designer at a company down here in Orlando. So Abby and I picked up and we moved down there. That would be September of 2023. And that first job, it was, I would say, I would not actually call it a good experience. It They laid me off after 4 months because another thing I'll probably reiterate a lot on the call is it's a very fluid industry and a lot of high turnover rates, especially for entry level people trying to get into the field. And it's a project based industry, right? So, when the demand for projects dwindles and staff is high and there's a misbalance there, somebody's going to have to be on the receiving end, of that misplay. And I was the last designer in, so I was the first one out. And so I didn't really have time to get my feet into too much there. But needless to say, that was an incredibly big shock making the move from Northeast down to Florida. And after 4 months, neither of us actually had a job. So there's obviously an underlying theme throughout all of this of God's, sovereignty and provision, and I will definitely bookend this talk with hinting at that. But we were really tested right off the bat. It also just opened my eyes to what the industry really looks like, and there's a curve, I believe, from my experience, where once you get over that curve and you've proved yourself too valuable of an asset to leave, or you've been there long enough where new hires have been brought in behind you, you sort of find yourself in a safe spot. But to get there, it's a little bit of a curve. And so after I got unemployed, it was about, by God's grace, only like a month and a half. And then I reached out to a company where I'm currently at called Design Communications LTD. They are a scenic design company, primarily, well, exclusively actually focusing on signage and various types of signage. And if you go onto their website and look at their portfolio, you will see not a lick of themed entertainment projects on their portfolio. And so I was a little bit hesitant heading into that interview, but immediately I was flooded with project after project for Universal and Disney that they worked on. They themselves will tell you you can't stand anywhere on Disney property where you can't see a sign that they designed. And so they hired me, and I took that job. So that was in February of 2024. Fast forward to 2025. No, fast forward to December of that year. They laid me off for the same reason. Again, just I don't think I had found my footing in the industry yet. They told me it was not performance based at all. They had just had a huge drop in projects and backlog, and I was the most previous designer in, so I was the first one out. In that next season of unemployment, again, the Lord found neat ways to provide. My next job after that I was a set decorator, actually, and that was probably, from day-to-day function of a job, the most fun I've ever had at work. My main project there was hanging and installing a lot of the props that you'll find on the test track refurb at Epcot. And so pretty much for 90% of my month and a half employment there, I was going to Epcot, for the day. And so I always told myself it would just be cool to have a career where I could go to a theme park every day. And that was my first time being able to get into, Magic Kingdom. And so I was really, really enjoying that experience. And so when I got a call to come back to Design Communications, I was very split. And ultimately, for the pay, ultimately I decided to go back to DCL, and I don't regret it, especially when the summers get to 105 degrees. I'm glad I'm not working outside. So that was March of this past year where I got hired back at DCL, and I've been there since. And Lord willing, I will make it to the end of March, and that will be the first year I've held a job for a whole year in a while. So that's where I'm currently at, and I know that that was really roundabout, but it shows ebbs and flows. It shows highs and lows in the process, and that's not even really getting into detail of the first year and how mentally and emotionally grueling it is to want to be working in your industry, and just not really seeing dividends for all of your effort. And I know that there's a lot of grads, a lot of friends of mine who would echo that same sentiment, and like a lot of them, I stuck it out, and it's gotten me to where I am today. And I can look back over my resume every point along the way, and I'm telling you, I may not have been able to tell in the moment, but every bullet point on that resume has gotten me to where I am today. And if I ever make it to a company like Universal or Disney, which is still, I think, would be the coolest company to work for, Walt Disney Imagineering or Universal Creative, I'll be able to see how significant my current role was to get me there as well. So
Yeah, that's the dream. I often cite you and some of the other grads who are working in themed entertainment to say, like, we have students that are making dreams come true, that are doing the work of Disney, of theme parks, and I do hope that you end up there someday. But I have to commend you for the amount of effort and patience and trust you've put into both your time as well as God guiding you through that. And I really appreciate that story. So you're back at Design Communications, DCL, you say?
Yes, DCL.
Okay, and that's still in Orlando, right?
Yeah, their headquarters is out of Boston, Massachusetts. They also, have a office in New York and a full fab shop here in Orlando. So we do design, build, and install of signage, and as I'll show you, that is extremely broad, and the work we do is very broad. I've designed bathroom braille plaques, and I've designed ceiling mounted fake neon animated signs, for Netflix houses, which I'll show. So yeah,
Uh,
very broad range.
yeah, can't wait. I think that's actually what is scheduled next is you sharing some work that you've done recently. So I'm curious to see what some of these things look like.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll set it up. So where I fall in the line of a project is as far as my perspective from it and from what I know from peers within the industry. Ultimately, at the top at the start of a project, we have the blue sky phase. We have the discussions around the table. We have the sketching, the ideating, the sticky notes up on the glass, just like you do at the ICC. And eventually from there, the design intent is fleshed out, and so now this is the creative intent. This is we'll use Disney and Universal as an example because those are the projects I'm going to show. But Disney or Universal will come up with a concept of a sign, and that will be in line with the branding of their attraction. They'll present the color scheme, the size, if it needs to do something, what's it going to do, where is it going to mount, how is it going to install, and all of that. And then from there, when DCL takes on the project, after all of the budgeting and the estimating, and when we're ready for production, that's when you enter the design engineers, which is my department. And so we're on the front end of production, and we will basically for submittals to the client, we'll give them two deliverables. Our graphics department will give them a graphics package, which will summarize all the colors and finishes and what kind of graphics are applied to the sign, stuff like that. The design engineering team will submit shop drawings, which I will now share my screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this actually is not from Universal or Disney. So Universal owns, well, Harry Potter is a Warner Brothers franchise.
Yes.
But in regards to theme park property, Universal Studios owns the Harry Potter franchise. But this was for Warner Brothers. This is just an experience, a store that's in Chicago. And so this is what our shop drawings, look like. These are just HDU, or basically, really strong foam letters that are carved on CNC to spell Harry Potter. And the unique thing about this is, obviously, we needed to maintain the branding of, the IP, that the trademark that is the Harry Potter logo. But what we learned with this project was that trademark carries over in the third dimension as well. So the depth of these letters also needs, to correspond to the intellectual property of the Harry Potter logo. And so I had to navigate some complications there, but basically, just like you'll see in many shops, shop drawings, you'll see, front view, elevation, giving it context to the building, side view, showing mounting methods, showing electrical. Electrical was a big thing that I had to learn when I came in
Wow. Yeah.
to DCL. Naturally, I had absolutely no reason to know how power supplies, how drivers, how controllers are all connected, how LEDs are wired to power supplies, how high voltage from the general contractor gets fed into our electrical enclosure so that it can all get fed to the sign, and how to do all that without, the customer seeing anything or being able to access anything electrical. SeaWorld built a roller coaster in 2024 called Penguin Trek. This was the main marquee for it.
Wow.
And unique. And one of the harder parts sometimes is accessing and being able to interpret the architecturals, which is basically the sign mounts to a wall. What does the wall look like?
Yeah.
And because of that, what kind of mounting, is necessary in order to mount. Definitely a broad range of projects. Here is an example of an ADA braille sign this is actually for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Epic Universe. We had the signage package for that, and so there was an unbelievable amount of signs we had to do, including stuff as simple as bathroom plaques or, in case of fire, do not exit plaques.
And I imagine with something like this, because it's about safety, because it's about ADA, you can't add whimsy to it. It's not like you can have a graphic of Harry Potter walking down the stairs.
That's what's fleshed out in the design intent, the creative intent that's given to us. So
Yeah, okay.
It's funny that you say that, because the actual we have for this project, we had wet floor signs that were probably the same size and idea as these, and the graphic was a wizard slipping and falling onto his butt.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
So, and of course, so that comes from the creative leads with Universal Creative. We never want to do, graphically anything different than what is given to us. Basically, what we do is we draw what they have told us to draw, but just in a way that, is manufacturable. So these are signs for Netflix House, which if you don't know what that is, there was recently recently one opened in Philadelphia and one in Dallas. They're basically indoor, quote unquote, theme parks without the rides. It's just an immersive experience for geeks and nerds, big fans of certain Netflix property, right? So movies, TV shows that are exclusively Netflix intellectual property. We designed these signs, branded for their cafeteria at these things. So we'll see if they take off, because abandoned malls are a very real thing. And, if Netflix is obviously growing and taking over a lot of the streaming and, television, industry. So
yeah,
there could
so
be.
is this sign that we're seeing for a specific Netflix property?
This is a show called Love is Blind.
Wild that it's something that you could immerse yourself in, that you could build a environment about this Netflix property. The one that comes to my mind is Stranger Things, because the season just finished. Is there anything in the Netflix houses Stranger Things related?
There was Stranger Things signs. Yeah, it's an escape room.
Yeah.
Stranger Things. They can look into this if this is intriguing. And obviously, a property like Stranger Things, you can have a more immersive experience than like Love is Blind. So I'm gonna spin around now, and these are finished photos of signs that I did. So first things first. There's the Harry Potter letters.
And you said what material is that?
High density urethane.
Okay.
We mainly work with aluminum. And so there was LEDs in the back, so it has this halo effect because it stood off from the wall, and so it gives it that yellow glow.
Okay, so it's backlit. You're not seeing through the high density urethane.
Correct.
There's no translucency. Okay. Wow.
Yep.
That's so cool.
And then the SeaWorld signage. So this is just the station of the ride.
Yeah.
Basically the signs and graphics you see in that area we did. And then there's the main marquee. So as you can see, to prove my point about like needing architecturals, like this was designed onto, fake rock work. And so needing to understand what we're mounting to is a key component too.
I know in the job that you had just before this one, you were on the install team. Do you do any of the install work, or are you there for any of the install work for these pieces?
That is the one thing I wish I could change about my job. It is 99 to 1% screen time versus versus being on your feet or out on site. I'd love to be on site more. And I will say that, but in the same breath, I did actually do a site walk for this attraction before it was open, just so we knew, the location of where all the signs were going and we could, field any questions or concerns we'd have. So before all these people and all of these signs were up, we actually walked through here. The track was done. It was all covered up. There were like boards over it so you could walk over the track. And so, of course, with my love of roller coasters, that was probably the best day of work I had so far.
It's special. Yeah.
But yes, I would love to install more, for sure. And then the last one is the Netflix Houses signs.
Wow.
So right here, if I can zoom in, oops. Actually, here's a better one. This was
okay. So yeah, I see a Squid Game in there. There's Stranger Things as well.
There's the Stranger Things.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing here is actually it was a buyout product. The strokes of quote unquote neon were a buyout product from another vendor, but we installed them onto a clear acrylic panel, and it was clear acrylic, so it basically looks like everything is just floating there.
Yeah.
And obviously, when you get all the show lighting and everything in place, it makes for a pretty spectacular sign. So hopefully this comes through. So there's an example of one that had animation. Yeah, it does.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the most complex of all of them.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
and
so
you did, all of these hanging signs were you guys?
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. This Netflix Bite sign in the back we did not do. All the ones ceiling mounted. So there you'll get a pretty good idea of both the space as well as our scope of the work.
Okay.
And I will say about this specific job, this was the meat of my late spring and summer. This one took a lot of late nights because we did not have a long time to design and build and ship these. But this is the job that I believe got me over that curve that I was talking about. I give God the honor and glory for getting me to a space where I have learned and grown a lot, and I've gained good reputation and much respect within my company. And this was a job that, it may have been given to me like, all right, this one's going to stretch him, and sure enough, it did. But it turned out, and I feel pretty good with whatever could come my way next. So
yeah, and obviously you gotta trust God with what happens. Sometimes things go the way that you were thinking. Sometimes they don't. But you also can be prepared. What am I trying to say here? I think what I'm getting at is sometimes opportunity comes when you've put in the hard work. And you're ready for things when you put in the hard work. You had that opportunity, you were able to work on that job, and you said it's some late nights. Sometimes you got to put in the late nights, and that can be what helps you get over the curve. Of course, there's certainly something to be said about a good work-life balance. That's not something that you want to sustain long term, but every once in a while, you got to put the time in. And when you put the time in and hand it over to God, that can lead you to the next good thing, or wherever He wants you next. That's great stuff. Thanks for sharing the work that you've done. I loved seeing not only the shop drawings, but also the finished products. That's got to be satisfying to see something that you've spent so much time on actually made real. Well, if you have a few more minutes, I do have a few more questions for you, if that's all right.
Let's do it, Gabe.
One question is, and you did mention this when we talked. You said that 99% of your day is in front of a computer. 1% is on the field where you actually get to walk the space. Can you give us another idea or a picture of what the range of your day-to-day can look like?
Yeah, function-wise, as in what I do at my computer every day, it is pretty much the same. But we have a really, really good variety of projects where it takes a lot to feel monotonous, if I'm honest with you, which is good. Monotony in a job is brutal. But there's basically two things we do. We create the shop drawings, and then after internal review and approval by the client, we do our last phase, which is our cut files, which is basically anything that is flat material that we can cut on the CNC or outsource to a water jet or a laser, we're going to create, the line work, the cut files for that. And that is just infinitely as important, if not more, because that is actually what's going to get built. So everything needs to align, fit with our, adhere to our fitment standards, in the shop, stuff like that. And then those get released for production. The sign gets built, and as necessary, we just help the shop along the way. And yeah, it does, seem monotonous because it is, working and creating shop drawings or creating cut files. And look, after 3 weeks of just cut files, depending on, what jobs look like or anything like that, that can get boring. But like I said, there, as you saw, there is enough variety, in the projects that we receive, and we also have collaboration, right? It's not just sitting still, sitting quiet with headphones in for 8 hours, which is nice, but the variety in projects is what really spices up the work week from week in and week out.
Yeah. And do you ever? You said your company does design and build.
Yeah, so everything, we design. Sometimes like smaller stuff will get turnkey if it's like super, niche of a product, but most of the stuff we'll build in-house.
And do you get to have any involvement with the building process outside of sending the drawings?
No, no, not outside of that, or consulting, or
Mhm.
brainstorming, or oh shoot, this part actually didn't fit. What are we gonna do? To make it work.
But as you said, designers, if they don't know how something is built, they're going to propose something that simply can't be built. So obviously, you gain some familiarity with the shop's capabilities and maybe some best practices for how to make something so that what you design, you send to them, and then you're not a pain to them because you actually know what you're talking about. So what are some software suites that you've been using?
We're very traditional. We use 2D AutoCAD.
2D AutoCAD.
That's 80% of our work. If needed, we'll model it. We'll 3D model it. So I'll 3D model in AutoCAD if need be. I actually just had a job where I didn't need to get into details. I just needed to visualize the overall size and connections of something. And so I just used 3D AutoCAD. A lot of my colleagues use Autodesk Inventor. And the big thing, even outside of our company, the industry, if it's not already shifted, it's heavily shifting towards Rhino.
Okay, yeah,
And if you know Rhino, you know AutoCAD, basically.
yeah.
So, so
Okay. So it sounds like the programs you're using day in and day out, AutoCAD. You have either coworkers or associates that are using Inventor. You're using Inventor, and then Rhino is a kind of a tangent software that maybe
yeah,
some familiarity would help.
I would say Revit's a tangent software too.
Sure, yeah.
That one's probably even less so. Uh, I'm assuming, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you're still teaching, SketchUp and SolidWorks, right?
SketchUp and SolidWorks, yeah. SketchUp for large volume concepting, SolidWorks for things that need to be manufacturable and more handheld,
Yeah. Well,
smaller
you
objects.
said the right word there, right? So I obviously do not have a conceptual, job.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be working in stuff like SketchUp. I will say learn as much as you can when it comes to anything, but staying on the software topic, learn what you can.
Mm-hmm.
If I recall correctly, when I interviewed for DCL, they saw that I could, on my resume, one of my skills listed was that I could do rendering. And they're like, oh, you can do rendering, huh? And they're like, cool. I didn't do it a day since, but I got the job. So you never know what goes into getting you that job.
Okay, just a few more questions, and I kind of want to shift the focus away from like what you've done and into if you have wisdom for students, something that you may have learned since you graduated, something that you would like them to know, and especially if students are interested in this kind of work, or really anyone watching or listening, if they're interested in this kind of work, what are some things that they really need to start understanding, putting in their portfolio, learning about, so that when they get that interview, they're prepared and the person across the table says, you know what, this person actually knows what they're talking about.
Everybody has a different route to that dream job, right? My route looked like I was a project manager out of graduation at a sheet metal shop.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 70% or 60% project management, 40% designing in SolidWorks. That could have just been stuff as simple as brackets, right? But I kept persistent with SolidWorks. I did a lot on the side to enhance my portfolio. You know, a lot of the skills were still fresh. I
Mm-hmm.
still had access to software, stuff like that. But if it wasn't for that job, I proving myself being able to create thorough drawings, I wouldn't have been able to get the job that got me to Florida. Like I'm confident of it. They looked at it and saw that, oh, I'm experienced with how to build things out of metal. Well, that's primarily what we work with. Yeah, we'll give them a shot. And both of those jobs lent themselves to me working at DCL. And in my case, what was more significant was knowing the right people at the right time. And I think anybody working in themed entertainment will tell you that that's extremely important, especially if you do want to work for like Universal or Disney or something. And I'll say this, if it's ever the Lord's will for me to work for Universal or Disney, it's going to be probably the positive reputation of my current workplace that is going to get me there. So I would say that has been, and looking into the future as far as my future career is concerned, that is the route I picture it taking.
That's fascinating. I appreciate you saying that. I think it's something that anyone who's had experience getting a job or interviewing for jobs or know someone who has gone through and gotten a job that they really wanted would be able to attest to that. It's not just the hard skills, but it is soft skills, and a soft skill that we don't often name is reputation.
Yeah.
Knowing people, obviously networking is important, but having a good reputation and people knowing that not only are you a good worker, like you have the skills, you know that you can get it done, but you are good to work with. I think that is. I appreciate you pointing out that that can be what gets you a job. Is people know you and know that you could do good work.
Yeah. And again, to throw credibility back at the portfolio, I don't know if my portfolio got a glance. If it did, I like to think I had a good portfolio coming out of the ICC. Uh, but you never know if what's going to make or break your employment opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. The other thing that you mentioned in your story is that the job that you got right after college, you were working in a steel shop. Is that what you're saying?
Sheet metal fabrication shop.
Sheet
Yeah.
metal fabrication. And I think students needs to remember or really keep in mind that their first job might not be their dream job. In fact, it's pretty unlikely that your first job is going to be your dream job, but it can be what leads to the next thing. And the next thing might be the dream job, but it might just get you a step closer to the dream job.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing your story of how you got to where you're at, and all the pit stops along the way, all the points on your resume you said that have led you to this point. And I know in your career you said you're sitting in front of the computer and you're taking the design intent and you're making it manufacturable. But I know that if people want to see your work, it isn't just at the Netflix house. It isn't just at the Harry Potter store in Chicago. Where else might people see some of your work?
Yeah. So if anything was gained from this conversation, hopefully you will realize that my career is very, very technical. And so, very quickly after moving to Orlando, I needed to find a creative outlet. And I very quickly discovered that that is fiction writing. So, that's what I took up. That's a long story that we don't have time for. But yeah, I started writing. I wrote the story, and Indie published it on Amazon. It is contemporary Christian fiction.
And the book is called.
The book is
Oh, you're showing us. Great.
yeah, the book's called The Violinist.
Look at
There's
that. Oh, those are some good reviews.
your fun cover, your fun blurb,
Uh huh.
22, 4.8 stars.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so, very interestingly enough, Gabe, when I was home at my parents' for the holidays, my mom busted out a time capsule, those things
Yeah.
that you write down.
Yeah.
I was 12 years old, and the question was, what is something you want to accomplish in your life? And I wrote down build roller coasters and write a book. So I did one, and maybe someday we'll have a variant of the other.
Yeah, I think you're on a good track to make that other dream a reality. So, if you could give us a synopsis, a blurb of what the book is about, and why someone want to read it. What's your pitch?
So it is a story about a young woman in her mid-20s, and the story picks up 6 years after she lost her mom to cancer. Her father is in the military, and after undergoing a pretty traumatic, experience along the lines, she opens her eyes one day and she realizes that she has no parental influence in her life because her mom is gone, and her dad, coping with his own grief, has estranged himself from her. And over time, she starts to, as the mental health field will say, she started to develop these negative belief systems about herself, and so she believed that she was unlovable, helpless, and in danger, more or less. And so, as a result, she started to develop a really crippling case of depression, of anxiety, little bits of suicidal ideation in there. And the Violinist is a 1 year snapshot at the most pivotal year of her journey, from just a really dark place of grief to healing. And why you should read it. Well, first of all, I think it captures, as was my main goal, it captures the redemptive story arc of God working in a lot of messed up, people's lives. No matter what you're going through, you're not beyond the saving love and grace of the Lord. And despite anything or everything in your life falling apart around you, He is a rock on which you can stand. And at the end of the day, even if faith, I encourage even people without really a faith, or skeptics in faith, I encourage them to read it too, because at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of relatable conflict, a lot of relatable internal struggle, which at the end of the day will make you think. And I think all good stories will induce an emotion in you and will make you think.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Joe, I really appreciate the time that you've given to us. Before we leave, any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to pass along to current students? Even if it's just reiterating something that we've talked about so far.
I will reiterate two things and then drive home one main point. The first thing is learn as much as you possibly can all the time, because you never know what may or may not be beneficial. The second thing is know how things are built. That will even if your career route finds you in a creative design route, like, the more you know about how things are made, that will only make you infinitely more valuable. See, as a technical designer, the creative side is already done for us. So I don't need really to have conceptual creative skills on my day-to-day work. But if you're a creative designer, you're only going to be more valuable if you know technical design as well. And then the last thing, and honestly, if I had to tell myself something probably at any point in my life in anticipation of a career, is work to live, don't live to work. And establish that mentality right out of the gate, because without you knowing, work can and will take over your life. When I said that I was working late hours, that was like 48-hour weeks, right? That's nothing compared to some people, and I'm thankful for that, right? But I don't think anybody wants to find themselves in a position where they're working 50 to 60 hours a week. We're made to work, but God also gives us the opportunity, and it's His goal for us to rest. And let me tell you, Gabe, I have never seen an industry where work-life balance is more horrible than the themed entertainment industry. I know a guy who cashes out all his PTO because he doesn't need to take a vacation, because he needs, just stay working. And I bet none of them, when they first started their career, would have wanted that for them. But slowly over time, I think they developed this idea that work needs me, right? And they do, in a really real sense. But when you're at your job, when you're clocked in, you work with excellence, you work with integrity. But when you're done, you go home and you enjoy going home. And look, like I said, there will be seasons where you may have to work hard. Obviously, in college, you'll be working really, really, really hard. And at the end of the day, God made us to work, but He also made us to rest, and that rest is really important. And establishing that mentality of rest is especially important right off the bat, or you will very slowly see that trickle into your life in ways that you would have never expected. So that's what I'd say.
A lot of wisdom in that. No, I really appreciate that, Joe.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Gabe. Thanks for all you guys do. Have to swing in the next time we're up in Columbus.
Please do, yes. And until then, send your wife our greetings. It's good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you, Gabe. See you
All
guys.
right. See ya.